Good afternoon and welcome to today's AdWeek webinar, where we'll be talking about YouTube advertising in the age of shorts and CTV. Today's webinar is sponsored by Pixability. I'm Danielle Moore, Senior Manager here with AdWeek's Content Studio, and I'll be your host. Today's presentation should go somewhere in the 25 to 30 minute range, after which we will definitely have time for audience Q&A. So if at any point you have a question for one of our speakers today, just use that Q&A tool right beneath the video window on your screen. We're going to get to as many questions as we can at the end of the presentation. Here at AdWeek's Content Studio, we know the world of marketing and advertising moves fast, and at AdWeek's Brand Week, taking place September 23rd to the 26th in Phoenix, Arizona, we'll gather the brightest minds in the business in person to share the insights you need to stay ahead. That includes CMOs, creatives, social media mavens, and industry powerhouses, and we'll all be unraveling the latest trends and challenges together. And as a special offer for our AdWeek webinar audience today, you can book your pass today at brandweek.com or using the link in the event resources area below, and use the code webinar20 to save 20% off on your pass. You can also find all of that link below, so be sure to check all of that out. Today's webinar is being recorded, and the on-demand recording will be available to all registrants today. We'll send you a link to that later today when it's live around 3:30 Eastern or so. And if you would like a PDF of today's slides, you can find that in the event resources area right beneath the video window on your screen as well. Now, let me introduce you to today's speakers. We're very happy to be joined by Lauren Clayton, Managing Director at Hahn. Lauren has a demonstrated history of success in top media roles at agencies and on the client side, overseeing successful campaigns for leading brands. We're also pleased to welcome Sam Bensel, Group Director, Performance Media at Cross Media. Sam leads Cross Media's programmatic team across all accounts and has been guiding brands on how to successfully utilize programmatic media within all levels of the funnel for 11 years. We're pleased to be joined by Layla Mays, RD and Manager of Multimedia Content Production at Texas Beef Council. Layla is a social media savvy registered dietitian with over 6 years of experience creating engaging food videos and growing beef-loving Texans' digital presence. And finally, we're pleased to welcome back Matt Duffy, CMO at Pixability. Matt leads marketing strategy at Pixability, which is the only company certified by the YouTube measurement program for both brand suitability / contextual targeting and YouTube content insights. All right, we've got a lot of great content to dive into today. So without further ado, let me bring all of our speakers up on screen here to get us started. Welcome, everyone. Thank you all so much for joining us today. I'll hand it over to you, Matt.
Thanks so much, Danielle, and welcome everyone. Very excited to be here with Lauren and Layla and Sam here today. We've got a nice combination of some agency leaders and a brand leader, so this will be fun. And I think we picked a good topic because I guess there are over 1,000 people registered for the webinar, so this is awesome. We're excited. Thanks for joining on a pre-Labor Day weekend webinar. So as Danielle said, we're going to talk a little bit about YouTube advertising in the age of shorts and CTV, and we're going to talk about other things that are affecting YouTube advertising in this crazy year that we're all in. And I thought I'd start with a quote from an article that happened just four months ago from the Washington Post, where they said, YouTube is the most consequential technology in America, which was a very bold statement by the Washington Post. The article was very interesting. It talked about a lot of the ways that YouTube has become a critical platform for advertisers to think about, but also a platform that's helping us understand human behavior. There were some statements in the article that it was used to help build ChatGPT, which was a controversial statement that some people agree with and others didn't. But it talked about how it's really become a CTV platform, which we're going to talk a lot about in this webinar. Also, it's the #2 search engine in the world. It talked about how it has more music listens than Spotify. So all these crazy ways that YouTube has become a part of our culture. And so I thought I'd lead with that and say, because of that, we all have to really figure out this platform and how as brands and marketers and agencies we use it. I think the challenge that we've seen is that it's still complex and it's becoming more and more complex to advertise on YouTube. We see a lot of changes to ad formats. We see a lot of changes to which types of channels can monetize their channel. And we're going to talk about that in this webinar. But what we're seeing is companies that come to us are often seeing as much as 45% of their impressions not where they want them to be, whether they're on unsuitable content that doesn't align with their brand, which we're seeing as much as 30% of impressions can be, or they're running on impressions that aren't reaching their audience, not engaging their audience, or in some other way, inefficient for them. And so it's complex, right? We all know this. We all know that YouTube is a big, complex platform. And so as a quick introduction to who we are at Pixability, if you're not familiar with us, this is what we address. We try to help solve this complexity for people. And we have an outcomes platform that does that. And by outcomes, we mean both suitability and performance. We basically have deep data, more data than anyone outside of Google, and we use that to build this high suitable scale of inventory for partners of ours, and then drive performance using our AI-driven performance tools. And this is how we can eliminate sort of that 45% waste that you're seeing. So a quick intro to us. So let's get into it. Excited to talk to these three about this. It's some very cool topics we're talking about. We'll start about YouTube as a CTV platform. Now, what we've seen is over the last 12 months, Nielsen has said every month in this Gauge report that YouTube has the highest reach of all the streaming platforms on CTV, higher than Netflix, higher than Prime, Hulu, Disney, et cetera. And so basically what this tells us is this is a platform that we need to be thinking about as we're transitioning from a linear TV culture to a CTV culture. YouTube should be thought of as a CTV platform. But that's easier said than done. I think the way some agencies are set up, it's hard to have YouTube run from their CTV teams if they're also running it from a digital team or a search team, et cetera. And so this is something that we're all figuring out together, and why I wanted to open up the conversation to Sam and Lauren and Layla a little bit. But first, I'll just show one more slide that I thought tells a good story from an agency friend of ours, Mike Fisher. This is a story he's been telling for years. But basically, when we talk about YouTube CTV, there are two forms of it. There's watching YouTube on TV, and then there's YouTube TV, and they're two separate things. And what Mike is saying in this quote is someone watching Saturday Night Live, a clip of Saturday Night Live on their television screen on YouTube is TV. That's a TV watcher. And we've seen this transition over the years, going from when everyone tried to watch it live or they missed it, and that was it. They missed SNL. To when they had DVRs, when people could DVR it. And then the next step in the evolution was people would watch it on Hulu or whatever streaming platform was hosting the shows. Now, people are all just watching clips. I know that's certainly how I watch SNL now. I'll just watch clips the next day and when someone forwards me it. So we've completely evolved as a culture. So let's talk to the folks on the panel here. Sam, I know you guys definitely have talked about how you think of YouTube as a CTV platform.
Yeah, and I think we're kind of at a place where when you're running YouTube, we used to think of it as digital online video, but at this point, just the way it's consumed, it's kind of hard to not think of YouTube as connected TV. Even just running a standard YouTube buy, you're going to inherently run on YouTube TV inventory. So, those people that, you're reaching are clearly watching in a kind of more connected TV space. And then just, the fact that so much inventory delivers on TV devices, that's kind of a change in how we used to think of YouTube, where, started off just like all desktop, and then you're watching a lot on mobile. And now we see the delivery on TV devices, and that it's kind of changed, and people are now kind of treating YouTube and watching YouTube as more of that like living room environment, and not so much like on the go or while you're sitting at your computer. So I think, it's not really a change that as marketers we made. It's more of just how things evolved to like now this is just how you have to look at YouTube.
Yeah, I totally agree. And Lauren, I know you've expressed some of the same things in terms of how On looks at YouTube as a CTV player as well.
Yeah, exactly. I agree with what Sam said, and I really liked the quote you had in there from Mike Fisher, and it's so true. How we're really consuming content is just so different. So, not only does YouTube have reach, but, they have an audience that is engaged and selecting the content they want to watch, but they're also selecting where they want to consume that content. And as Sam mentioned, like we are seeing that shift, and we're seeing a lot more delivery on TVs. So we've really made that shift in how we're buying and trying to have more of a holistic strategy. That's really where we started working with Pixability, was trying to find someone that had that YouTube expertise, but we could really have a combined buy where we had, shared targeting and shared frequency across both our YouTube and our CTV buys. And that really has paid off for us and our clients. Something I'm sure a lot of people have also noticed is the addition of the Google TV network as you're setting up and placing your YouTube buys. So this really is Google being in that CTV space. So while you can uncheck it, that is something our team has left on, and we've seen some great results from that. But you do need to be aware of it. There are buys where we still have operating in our DSP. So making sure you're excluding inventory where you can so that you don't have the overlap. But it's really starting to merge and really becoming one buy for our agency.
Yeah, and I've been super excited to talk to you guys, knowing that you see the value of YouTube as a CTV player. I think there are still people that think of YouTube as, cat videos, or they have their own preconceived notion of what TV is and a show is. And I always remind people, listen, there's a new definition of a show, and creators are creating mini shows every day. Mr. Beast is the most obvious example, where he has 307 million subscribers. Actually, I think it's now up to 312. I just put this slide together like a week ago, and it's already gone up 5 million in a week. So, and if you have Hulu with 106 million subscribers, and there are media teams doing whole strategies around Hulu, and just one creator on YouTube has 3 times as many subscribers, is insane, right? So we all have to figure this out. And so some of the takeaways that we give, and again, Sam and Lauren touched on this, is CTV. You need to think of CTV, or think of YouTube as a CTV player, whether you're running it alongside your CTV campaigns or as part of a CTV campaign, as Lauren said, or you're just doing, as Sam said, knowing that every campaign that you run on YouTube as a digital campaign is going to have TV impressions. Those TV impressions have increased and increased and increased. And so make sure that's considered. And we've seen a lot of good brands. We work with Kind that does this, where they'll have campaigns that are specifically set apart, where they're targeted to TV impressions to see how that works, different creative, different strategies, et cetera. And then the second point here is just, that Kind point, treat them differently if they're TV impressions. And the third is, if you want TV-like inventory, you can certainly find that on YouTube. It's, not every impression on YouTube is created equally. Some impressions are more of that TV kind of, laid back impression. All right, so we're gonna go through 5 topics today, and CTV is just one of them, and short form is the second one. So lots of things happening on YouTube. We can dig into any of these things deeper in the Q&A, or if folks wanna follow up with any of us. But so we just talked about YouTube as a CTV player, but at the same time, it's making itself a short form player, which is very interesting. It's these 2 different, sort of presumably different models, right? So YouTube came out with their version of TikTok in July of 2021. So, good 3 years ago now. But shorts were basically not something that advertisers could fully take advantage of until recently. They were basically used for organic content, and Layla's going to talk a little bit about this because she's very heavy on the organic content for her brand. But it was very much an organic play on YouTube for a while. It wasn't until December of 2023, this past December, that advertisers could specifically isolate YouTube Shorts content in their advertising. It used to be that they had to use ad units that they knew might end up on Shorts, which is what this top image is expressing. And now they can actually say, please put this just only on Shorts content. So it ushers in a whole new model of advertising for YouTube advertisers. Now, even before you were able to target just Shorts, you could use vertical ads. You could use a vertical short form ad, and it would appear on horizontal content as well. And what we were finding that's interesting, and we always tell people, is those ads actually end up performing really well. We think partially because it kind of surprises people that there's a vertical ad unit on a horizontal spot, but we can see as much as double the click-through rate and 10% higher VCR and so forth. So we always tell people about this. And then the other thing we always tell people about Shorts is, like TikTok, it's in a feed, right? And so you're not going to get high video completion rates like you will on other units on YouTube, because people are scrolling through a feed and often not staying till the end of the video or ad. What you will see is you can get some good click-through rates and performance metrics that aren't view to completion rate, but also you get great reach and great CPMs. And again, I think Lauren and Sam, we both talked about this. Sam, I know you said this is something that you've seen as well when you guys have tested Shorts.
Yeah. Yeah, we have a toy company. So it's like, right, or a toy brand that fits right into that, like, TikTok mindset. And what we've noticed is, great reach, not very good completion rates, as you mentioned, but we're getting a ton of engagement, a lot of click-throughs. So it's kind of just, I'm no better than anybody else. I find myself addicted to the scrolling of TikTok, and it's kind of, the next step in just even YouTube or any ads is to how can you input yourself into where, people are. And these YouTube shorts, I think, are just kind of YouTube meeting and evolving to get to where their people are. And I think just the benefit that we've seen is just, incredible engagement, a lot of click-throughs. So it's kind of just finding how it works and everything else. So I know like this topic is specifically about shorts, but, how do you make it work with your longer form content? And one of the ways YouTube kind of makes that easy is their ad sequencing, so that you can, people have watched full longer form content, and now you can follow up and get them to engage more by, serving them these YouTube Shorts videos after they've already kind of become educated and aware due to your longer form. So I think, shorts are great engagement, and it's just kind of making sure you're thinking about how they kind of fit into everything and not just thinking, oh, it's the latest, greatest, let's just throw it in because it performs well.
Awesome. And Layla, I know you guys, like I said, you guys approach shorts from the organic standpoint. So talk a little bit about how that has been a valuable tool for you in your toolbox.
Absolutely. Yes, in the past, we did have a lot of great success with longer form video series on YouTube, like our barbecue series called BarbeQuest. But recently, we're just seeing, with audiences having shorter attention spans, that there's really a need to focus on short form video content. So in partnership with our agency, Han, we're creating in-house short form content for all of our platforms, including TikTok, Reels, and YouTube Shorts. So we're just finding that sharing across all the platforms has been a really great way to maximize the reach of our content. And it really has us just wondering, is creating long form content in the future something, we really need? Can a viewer, when they're watching a recipe video, get everything they need in under 60 seconds? We're also continuing to find that our audience is finding our YouTube Shorts through organic search. And one of our top performing pieces of content is how to clean a grill. So we're really finding our audience has a desire to find content based on tips and tricks and how-to videos. So it's just been a really exciting platform to test for our brand online.
Yeah, I think, as I said, the organic part of Shorts launched first before the ad version of it. And so great organizations like yours have figured out the ways to use it. The one thing I skipped over, just so that everyone knows, is it's grown very rapidly. YouTube's done a good job of incorporating shorts into everything. So we all are almost forced to watch shorts. It doubled from, it didn't double. It went from 1.5 billion to 2 billion from 2022 to 2023, and it's grown some more in 2024 as well. But these are the most recent stats. So just to sum up, and we'll move on to topic number 3, even if you're not advertising on shorts, you need to embrace shorts content on your channel the way that Beef Loving Texans does and Layla's team does. If your goal is low cost reach, shorts are great. If your goal is VCR, view to completion rate, it's not as great. But beware of some targeting limitations too. There are some suitability limitations with shorts right now that if you have any questions on, please reach out to us or your agency. So with that, we'll talk a little bit about brand suitability and safety on YouTube. Lots of changes here as well. I like to start with just like the idea of level setting where YouTube is. YouTube and Google have done a really, really good job of making YouTube safe. Over the last 5 or 6 years, it's come a long way, to the point where recent reports from GARM, now we can talk about GARM in a second, but recent reports from GARM have shown that YouTube is about 99.9% safe. So you're generally very, very safe on YouTube now. But safety and suitability are not the same thing, right? Suitability is where, beef loving Texans might have different ad concerns than a toy company that Sam works with. And so what we're seeing, again, I mentioned this stat before, but as much as 30% of your impressions can be unsuitable if you're not doing the right things, not having the right strategies around it. And so these are the types of content that could make something unsuitable for you. It could be a level of suitability that GARM has set out these levels of suitability. It could be below what you believe is suitable for you, below the floor or below a certain suitability level, like high risk. It could be on the wrong language. It could be made for kids. It could be saying something negative about your brand. All of these things that are hard to prevent, frankly, on YouTube. And the other thing the change that's sort of more recent is last summer, Google lowered the bar in terms of which channels can monetize ads. It used to be 1,000 plus subscribers. Now it's 500 plus subscribers. So you're seeing a lot more long tail on your advertising, which, by the way, is fine for a lot of brands that are just looking to drive performance. They're less concerned about the premium content they're on. But for some brands, they want premium content and they just have to be concerned with, and there are ways to limit the subscribers on the, have a minimum on subscribers of the channels that you run on. And so another great example, I've brought this up before because it's old, but given it's an election year, the last time we had an election year, there's going to be a lot of misinformation this year, but a lot of also creators taking positions on things that people should be aware of. This was an example years ago, back in 2020 for the election, that Amanda Ensing, a very popular beauty influencer, who still is a very popular influencer, took a position where she was supporting the Capitol riots, which angered left-leaning people who started to say boycott Sephora because Sephora had sponsored her channel. Sephora didn't have a partner that was paying attention to this, and so they got caught in this, and they pulled their advertising from Amanda Ensing's channel. And then folks that were leaning right started to boycott Sephora because they'd pulled their advertising from Sephora. So all of this is to say that suitability and safety is still complex on YouTube. And it's very nuanced by advertiser. And so I'd love, Lauren, you talk about that a little bit, because I know, you have specific needs in terms of what's suitable and not suitable for you all when you're advertising.
Yeah, absolutely. You kind of touched on this with Beef Loving Texans, but given that our goal here is for someone to consume beef or purchase beef, being in vegan or vegetarian content would not be suitable for our brand. So that's something we work to exclude from our campaigns, and working with y'all has really helped with that. Yeah, that's one where most advertisers would be fine with that type of content. But for that brand in particular, it's definitely something we do not want to be within.
Yeah, and conversely, we work with vegan brands that don't want to be on content about steak, so
Right.
it can work both ways. And Sam, I know that you always have these conversations with your clients to kind of see where they lie, because there are people that are saying drive performance at all costs, and there are people that are saying keep me so suitable that it might limit performance. But most people are somewhere in between. But you got to have the conversation, right?
Yeah, and I mean, I referenced our toy brand, and as you did, they're much more strict about where they can run. That can be detrimental for, your toy advertising to run and not align with kind of what your audience is looking at, where they want to be. And then just on the flip side, we also have a tequila brand, and we have a casino brand where, when you usually think of brand safety, you're automatically kind of, okay, we need to exclude alcohol and we need to exclude gambling. But that doesn't really work when you have an advertiser who their main product is like their gambling, along with all the other kind of things they have going on at the casinos that sometimes revolve around, alcohol, brew fests, tequila fests, you name it. And same with tequila advertiser, where, they're still strict about, advertising and what they align with, but you don't have those same limitations of, you need to be very kind of focused and keyed in on specific content. You have more options for content than you would a toy brand, but you still need to be mindful of, what kind of things are within that content, just because, with the leverage you're able to pull within YouTube platforms, you can, do your best to try to avoid things. But I think that's where it comes into play of partnering with like a Pixability to be more kind of honed in, and do a lot of the heavy lifting. Because it is a day-to-day kind of heavy lift of constantly checking, all right, where did we serve? a lot of deep dives into like what kind of content we're around. So working with like another outside data partner can be really helpful in kind of doing that heavy lifting for you.
Yeah, and that's a great segue into some of our takeaways. And again, these takeaways are ones that the four of us talked about a bit. So if you have concerns about suitability, or even if you don't, if you want to make sure you're on content that aligns with your brand, you should work with a data partner. Also, just keep in mind recent shifts. Like, again, Google is shifting all the time. So this most recent shift, again, it was last summer, but to kind of lower the bar in terms of what types of channels can monetize. And then the last thing is suitability does not equal performance. So we hear some people saying like, well, we're not doing a lot to drive performance because we've got this suitable list of channels from a partner of ours. And that's not the right way to approach it, to just say, all I need is a suitable list and the performance will take off. And so that's a good segue into our next topic, our fourth topic. There are lots of good performance tools on YouTube now, one of which called video action campaigns, which works really well to drive performance. I think what some people don't know about it or weren't clear about it at the beginning is that it doesn't only run on YouTube. So you're trying to run a YouTube campaign, you're using video action campaigns. These campaigns will also run outside of YouTube on GVP, which is basically Google's partner video content. So it can be mobile ads, or mobile games and so forth that are outside of YouTube. Now, we always tell people if performance is top priority and context is less of a priority, these are great ad units. They can deliver as much as 2 to 4 times as much performance in some cases. But what we tell them is that if they're sensitive about that, you can get performance using other ad units outside of VAC. And so we always, again, have a conversation like Sam said about where your priorities lie. There were some big controversies around this over the last year because some advertisers felt like it wasn't clear. And I think what Google did, which I think angered some people, they made it less clear that GVP was going to be parts of things. And I just wanted to show the screen. On regular ad units, not VAC, but regular ad units, you can opt out of GVP. But it's an opt out. It's you're by default you're opted in, which is what this blue check mark is here. So I think the articles that you saw were about advertisers that didn't know you even had to opt out. And so I think there was some lack of clarity there, and that got some people upset. I think what we're seeing is I have 2 examples of people that went to one extreme, or brands that went to one extreme. We had a McDonald's come to us that was working with a brand suitability partner that provided them with a small suitability list of channels, right? And because it was a small list, they didn't get scale and they didn't get performance, so they didn't reach their KPIs. Then separately, we had a giant international finance company come to us who was all about performance, but they had opened up their lens so wide that when they had us look, they were running on a lot of unsuitable channels too. And so obviously the goal for all of us on this call and for everyone is to have both of these things green lighted. You want to have your KPIs met and you want it to be suitable. And so, the last thing I'll say is contextual partners sometimes think they know exactly what context is going to work perfectly for you, but it's really in the data. And we have a lot of data at Pixability on what works best for hotel brands in this example. For example, if they came to us and said, we're going to only run on travel content, we'd say, don't do that. Like there's a lot of other categories that are working really well for you. So with that, I thought we talked a little bit about, performance with the team and Sam, you and I talked about this a little bit and, these performance tools and, whether they're transparent or not and so forth. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think my main thing is, Google has that habit of just opting you automatically into things. So again, it's that conversation and being clear and transparent with your brands that if you want to, run these VAC campaigns, you need to be aware that you're going to be showing up outside of YouTube. I found that most of our brands, when you're talking about YouTube, they're expecting to only be running on YouTube. So if you're going to be running elsewhere, it needs to be upfront and clear, because you don't want to be the one, providing reports later. And it's like, oh, why are we running on things that aren't YouTube? I had no idea. So that's kind of like just the transparency factors between you and your brands and being clear about how those campaigns work. And then also just making sure your internal teams, the ones hands-on keys, are kind of making sure that this is part of their QA, making sure that if you are running only a YouTube campaign, you're deselecting, the Google video partners so that you're not running outside of YouTube. So it's just a lot of kind of conversations you need to have, and just not, putting full trust in that you set it up, it's only going to run on YouTube because you set it up as a YouTube campaign. Yeah. You need to have those conversations, just be aware of, where you could run.
Yeah, exactly. And I'll, just some of the takeaways we had from the performance tools is they do work well. So that's one question we get. But they also take away some of the transparency and control, like Sam said, so just be aware of that. If suitability is a priority, you can find performance without using some of these tools too. So don't feel like you have to. I really want to get to this last topic because I know Layla has some really, really fun stuff to contribute to this as well. So responsible media is obviously a huge theme across the industry, which is a great movement. I think one of the things we saw, we did a study of media agencies just before the year, and we heard a lot of agencies and brands saying that DE&I was going to be one piece of the responsible media strategy for them that was going to be really important. And we're seeing that. What we saw on YouTube, unfortunately, the challenge was we had people coming to us saying, we really want to run this campaign on channels that are Black-owned channels or AAPI-owned channels or LGBTQIA+ owned channels. And the problem is there was no real good way to do that because we didn't believe it was right for anyone to just judge a channel based on the perception of this creator might be Black or might be LGBTQIA+. And so what we did is we worked with creators and creator firms to address this, because we believe the only way it should be done is by letting the creators self-identify. And so we created this inclusive media initiative where creators could come and self-identify being part of one or more of these groups. And almost all of them are part of at least 2, sometimes 3 of these diverse communities. And Google supported this because this is something that Google can't do. This is Google's global head of creators, Kim Larson, who's awesome, who loves this program. Brands love this. Charisse Hughes, our friend at Kellanova, loves this because they have a lot of programs where they're trying to support diverse-owned businesses and communities. And we saw this grow rapidly over the year, over 7x growth since we launched it in October. The more important thing is, what does this mean to advertisers? I think, and I talked to the team about this too. How important are creators, diverse or not, are creators in their marketing efforts going forward, where they're choosing creators for programs and so forth. And I know, Layla, this is something that's super important to you all and how you guys work.
Yes, absolutely. DE&I is very important to our mission at Texas Beef Council. We prioritize in our advertising and content representing Texans from all diverse groups and populations. And one of our upcoming efforts to support this initiative is our Hispanic Heritage campaign coming up in September. And when we're partnering with social media influencers, we also prioritize partnering with influencers from diverse backgrounds. So we're really excited to hear about the initiative from Pixability and the opportunity for creators to self-identify. And that's definitely a tool we'd love to explore. And I'd love to know, does the tool have the granularity to identify creators who are based out of Texas?
It doesn't, because we don't ask location unless we can, but we sometimes know which creators are just because we know them, we've worked with them, but it's not to that granular level. But we know about which communities they represent. We know what topics they represent. We know how suitable their impressions are. We know all that good stuff. So
awesome. Well, very exciting.
Yeah, and so just to close out on this last topic, and then I'm seeing a lot of really good questions come in. Diverse publishers and creators are not always the marquee names. So if you're looking to work with diverse creators, so for example, we have Steve Harvey in our community, but he's a very known quantity that you would know to reach out to Steve and his management team. We have thousands of creators that are lesser known. This is a way to support them. The other thing is, if you're gonna try to support diverse-owned businesses on YouTube, we believe the right way to do it is to find self-identified creators versus trying to make that decision yourself, and make it measurable. Make sure there's a way to measure this so you're actually measuring how you're impacting the communities. And with that, we will leave to questions. And I see a lot coming in, so I'll hand it back over to Danielle.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for those insights. Lots to discuss. Yes, Matt, as you mentioned, we're going to take some questions here. We'll get to as many as we can over the next 5 to 10 minutes or so. But as you mentioned, we do have a lot of questions, so we may not get to all of them today. To our audience members, please know that if we don't get to your question live today, we always make sure they get forwarded over to our speakers so they have the opportunity to reply offline. Just a couple of quick reminders from AdWeek here before we get started with questions. Today's webinar has been recorded and will be available on demand later today, so keep an eye out for the email containing that recording that'll be out around 3:30 Eastern or so. And if you'd like a copy of today's slides, you can grab those from the event resources area right beneath the video window on your screen. All right, let's jump in with some of these questions, shall we? So our first question here, you showed that advertisers can waste ad spend on YouTube by not using the right types of performance tactics. Can you give some examples? Matt, I'll throw that one to you first.
Yeah, so there are a number of different things we see when agencies or brands come to us that they're not doing. One thing is people don't realize how great behavioral targeting is on YouTube. We're a contextual brand suitability and contextual firm certified by Google, but we would never say only use contextual targeting. If you're able to use behavioral targeting too, it's amazing. And so we see people coming to us that are just using contextual targeting only, and they're missing out on possible performance there. I think the other thing we see is people with a lack of understanding of the ad formats on YouTube, not knowing how they work and how they use and the changes that happen with them. So that's another one. And then I think the other thing we're seeing is some people, when they think of contextual targeting, we mentioned this earlier, but they might only think of, let's just target to these few categories of content, not knowing that the typical user goes on YouTube for all kinds of different content. So to think that you're only going to find someone in market for a car and car content is obviously too narrow a focus. So if you're doing any of those things, you're likely probably wasting impressions in terms of performance.
Particularly interesting example you shared where travel content does not usually, like travel ads don't necessarily do the best on travel content. And it does make sense that they might do really well on other content, food content, like everything related to travel indirectly. So yeah, interesting to hear more about those potential pitfalls and how you can correct them. Our next question here, can you give some examples of how you use shorts or vertical content in conjunction with longer form content? So how we're using the two together. Sam, would you like to jump in on that one?
Yeah, of course. I think I briefly mentioned it as well, but for our toy brand, we've run a mix of just standard in-stream as well as shorts. And what we found is, the in-stream is really great at just driving completion rates. It holds, attention longer. It has more of that kind of, content that's made for kind of holding your attention. But then we include shorts to just kind of follow up with that quick kind of messaging, driving more engagement. So they all kind of like play their part in kind of using video longer form for, learning more about the product, the service, whatever it is. And then your shorts just kind of being that kind of bridge to driving engagement and driving those clicks. The hope is they've already learned what your product is about. And so now you don't need that long form message, but rather, work on driving that engagement and driving them to cite additional content wherever you're driving them to.
Great example. Thanks for sharing that. Question here for Lauren and Layla. What have you found is a good way for brands and agencies to work together on strategy for YouTube? In other words, how do you guys work together? What works for you?
Sure. Yeah, I'm happy to start. The great thing about our relationship with Beef Loving Texans and Layla is it's very collaborative. I don't think any of us have really nailed down in our, perfect in our YouTube strategies. What works for one client is not going to work for another one. So, we're testing, we're learning things as we go. And so having a partner on the client side that is willing to learn and test things with us is it's very valuable. And so they're really great about that. And their team is also, creating a lot of that content in-house. So together we're collaborating, we're looking at analytics together, and then we're really kind of adapting and adopting different strategies as we go through the year. I think this year was a really great example where we've run, almost 30-minute type of long form content. We've run 30 seconds, 6 seconds, and now we're testing short. So they're willing to, try new things with us and kind of learn as we go, which is really nice.
Absolutely. Yes, like Lauren mentioned, it's been really great to partner with the team at Han to experiment with new things with our social media and ad strategy. And we're just finding that the team at Han brings us recommendations based on research and trends. And so we have that trust, with them to try new things and test and learn and see how it goes.
Like that partnership has been super fruitful, and I'm excited to check out some more of that content, Layla, but I should probably wait to do it until after lunch because I imagine it's going to make me very hungry. But thanks both for sharing that. Our next question here. So this one I find really interesting because, Matt, we've worked together on webinars before that have addressed brand suitability and how things are changing. So someone's curious about how things are tracking there. Has brand suitability on YouTube become easier or more difficult in the past few years? I feel like Lauren and Matt, you can both speak to that, so feel free to jump in.
I can start, Lauren, if you want to jump in too. I would say it's kind of both. It's kind of a mixed answer. Like it has become, I think brand suitability has become more, brands and agencies are more aware of what it is. It was difficult for a while because it was confusing between safety and suitability. I think now people realize that safety means like just no brand should be on it, but suitability is specific just to my needs. So the good news is it's gotten easier because brands already generally know that they want what it is and that they want it. I think it's become harder in some ways on YouTube because of just the volume of content, especially with the now there are more long tail channels, et cetera. We always point out that there's a Netflix content uploaded to YouTube every hour. So just with the volume of content, I think it's harder. I think the technologies are getting better. So again, it's kind of a mixed response. I don't know, Lauren, if you feel differently.
Yeah, no, I agree. I definitely think that transparency is there. It is easier to find where our ads are running and within the content, but it is a heavy lift in, seeing what is within the content, where are all of our ads running. It is part of our daily optimizations and checks, but it's a substantial lift because you don't want to be too narrow and targeted. And then we have scale issues and performance issues. So, it's that fine balance of, having scale, but also making sure that where you're running is appropriate for the brand.
Sense. Thanks for walking us through that. All right, next question here. Why do you think Google makes GVP mandatory on some of their ad units? Matt, do you have any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I can definitely talk to that one. We talked about it a little bit, but I think Google is smart to make GVP available to advertisers. If I'm an advertiser and I want to drive performance, and there's performance that's to be had on GVP inventory where I can drive whatever it is I'm trying to drive, conversions, sales, whatever, then I would want to have that as an option. I think, again, I talked about this. Some people don't like the way that they brought it to the market where it felt like it was sort of, you had to opt out of it versus opting into it on regular ad units, and on VAC, you can't opt out of it. So I think I'm very glad that YouTube brought GVP as an option for advertisers because we're seeing it work really well for folks. But I think there just needs to be, as Sam pointed out, some more transparency and clarity on it.
Yeah, makes sense. All right, we've got time for one more question here. I'm curious to get your thoughts on this. We often see ad spend on YouTube go up in Q4. Are you all seeing that from your clients? That's a question for Sam and Lauren. Any thoughts on the Q4 boost or the Q4 spending increase?
Yeah, I can jump in for my clients quickly. Short answer, not really. Our clients that kind of have like an always on approach, they don't really increase or decrease. It's just kind of status quo as we move through, just making them aware of, like all media, CPMs tend to, go up. So it's just something to be aware and like not a surprise. There are some clients that have maybe a heavy up just due to the winter season. We have a CPG client that they have a heavy focus on cough, cold, flu season. So they tend to just kind of change our media approach for Q4 and into Q1, just to kind of, change our messaging, how we're reaching people, where we're reaching people. So we can see from them sometimes the YouTube just kind of overall strategy changes compared to how we've run the rest of the year. And then, keep mentioning the toy brand that Cross Media has. And, as you get closer to the holiday season, it's kind of interesting because we kind of do a lot of more YouTube and reaching kind of made for kids our content as we head towards Q4. And then Q4 is really reaching parents of those kids to kind of drive the purchase. So with that client, we tend to see YouTube budgets actually go down a bit as we focus more on lower funnel tactics.
Lauren, anything from your end?
Sure. Yeah, similar to what Sam said, we really don't see a lot of our client budgets going up. We definitely do see those costs increase, though, as we get closer to the end of the year. So for a lot of our clients, if they don't need to be on during this time, we'll intentionally, take a pause or spend that budget ahead of it, just because they're going to get lost up in holiday messaging and also pay higher costs. So it's not really worth it for the brand to be there. But for clients like Beef Loving Texans, when people are entertaining and cooking holiday meals, we do want to be in that mix. And we do see better performance during that time period, but we don't intentionally increase our spend there. So again, it's always a balancing act.
Thank you for those insights. Unfortunately, that is all the time we have for questions for today's session. But as I mentioned, we're going to make sure any questions that didn't get answered get forwarded over to our speakers. I'd like to thank our speakers as well as our sponsor, Pixability. Some final reminders here from AdWeek. Make sure you grab those slides from the event resources area and be sure to check your email for a link to the on-demand recording later today. As always, if you enjoyed today's webinar, be sure to check out the AdWeek webinars calendar to learn more about our upcoming events at adweek.com/webinars. And you can also find similar content at AdWeek's Brand Week event from September 23rd to the 26th, where you'll be able to hear from CMOs at brands like MasterCard, Wendy's, Crocs, and Molson Coors. Be sure to take advantage of our special webinar offer by using the link below with code webinar20 for 20% off your pass. Again, huge thank you to our speakers today. Thank you to our audience for joining us live. And as always, we look forward to seeing everyone at an upcoming AdWeek webinar. Thank you all.